What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Canes Insight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. We got our quarterback, we got our defensive coordinator, we got Mike Ryan in studio. How you doing?
Pete, hop in. I'm doing great. Good to be back with you.
Wow, I'm hopping in early today.
Yeah.
Well,
you have to explain.
Early.
Not early at all, but
It's
25
perfect.
minutes late.
I would say it's perfect timing, as Shador Sanders would say.
I was here. I was ready to go. Sorry, Canes Insight fans. Sorry we got a later start today. But yeah, I'm super excited. I'm excited about the quarterback. Definitely different vibes than what felt like last week when I think I openly pleaded for Jalen Daniels to not enter Kansas's graduate program.
Oof.
But look, number one player in the portal, back-to-back years. Mario Cristobal ends up with, Cam actually, this is something that I want to talk about, the Cam Carson Beck thing.
Yeah, you got strong opinions on that one.
I do. And I think many people watching this are a little silly because I've seen the opinions out there. But I like Cam Ward the best out of all the quarterbacks and the options. I think I maybe lean yours over Beck just because I have natural questions about the arm injury that I'm sure you covered. And I know Miami feels great about it. I know Brock Purdy was betting favorite for NFL MVP 6 months after this surgery. It's still a guy who uses his arm for a living, and it's an arm injury. I think you'd have to be a fool to not be a little worried about that. Also, the interceptions, although that worries me a little bit less. So let's get to, if I may, because my time's abbreviated here,
Thanks,
the fan reaction to this from not just Miami fans, because I think Miami fans are fine to have questions, and it's a natural byproduct of having such an incredible quarterback last year. I'm really confused by some of the reaction from our rivals, but here's my point. You know the quarterbacks that this program's had over the last 25 years, even when the program was cooking. All right, we're talking Ken Dorsey, we're talking Brad Kaya, we're talking Jaron Williams, we're talking Malik Rozier. We're not talking about quarterbacks that are drafted day 1, day 2, day 3. And like we're talking about quarterbacks that maybe get undrafted free agents, maybe 5th, 6th round. This has not been historically a hot spot for quarterbacks and, quite frankly, quarterback development. Cam Ward changed the program so much. Cam Ward was so good that he's got you idiots out there forgetting the last 25 years. Carson Beck also comes in, let me remind you, because everyone likes to do this thing with Cam Ward, and I'm sorry to talk to you. If you're not an idiot, this is not for you. But Cam Ward came in with so many questions. It is such a disingenuous debate to say, well, he's not going to be Cam. You're playing the result. Because Carson Beck walks into this program with way more accomplishments, with way more consensus about his next level ability than Cam Ward has. We're talking about a guy that entered last season as the betting favorite to be the number 1 pick. We're talking about a guy who, according to some books, is already the betting favorite to be the number 1 pick in next year's draft. He is the second betting favorite behind Arch Manning, deserved, and now QB1 in Texas. We can get into that in a little bit. He is the second betting favorite to be Heisman next year. Carson Beck is a reigning SEC champion. He has been a part of national title teams against ranked teams. A proof is in the pudding. Yes, I know he throws interception against. Sometimes he throws multiple interceptions against ranked opponents. He also throws for about 450 yards. He also throws for multiple touchdowns. He also is mobile. He also, for playing at a program that had great talent, the wide receiver position, not all that great at that school.
Awful last year.
So many drops. Protection wasn't that great. He was working with a Georgia team that had fallen off a little bit and fell victim to what happened to all the SEC, which is, hey, I guess other teams can pay for players now. We're kind of screwed in terms of running roughshod over the nation. Carson Beck is an SEC championship winning QB1. You wanted to go into the season with Emory Williams? I don't understand this. Yeah, Cam Ward's probably going to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. Break yourselves of that. Let's go back to just last year when we were longing for someone that was better than Jaron Williams or Tyler Van Dyke. You got that in Carson Beck. He does not need to be Cam Ward. We fully expect this team to be more balanced, much better defense, leaning into its strengths. And I think what Mario Cristobal said about openly challenging Ruben Bain, Mawanoa, and Mark Fletcher tells you everything that you need to know about how this team is going to approach next season. We talked about that Syracuse game, D. We kind of fell in love a little too much with Cam Ward saving our bacon, and probably should have leaned into that identity a little bit more down the stretch. I think that this is a home run for Miami, especially when you think about Miami still having to be in the talent acquisition game. Momentum playing such a key factor in that. You have your QB1 now settled. I think it's a great job by a guy who had this narrative around him about not being able to get quarterbacks. Now, all of a sudden, every year, the top quarterback in the portal wants to come to Miami.
Yeah, I think that was well said. By the way, love the look, right? I've noticed as you keep returning to optimum fitness, you look more and more like a reggaeton star, similar to Zuckerberg. I mean, Zuckerberg vibes as far as the correlation of wardrobe to fitness level.
Great. He's my muse, so you nailed it.
But yeah, I agree with you totally. Look, the comparisons to Cam Ward and last year's offense are never going to help Carson Beck or Miami, because look, you're the number 1 overall pick, betting favorite. We think it's probably going to happen based on everything we've heard. Cam Ward, number 1 overall to Tennessee, or a team that trades up with Tennessee. Okay, so number 1. The offense was number 1 by a lot. So there's only one direction to go, which is backwards, or you have an incredible, unbelievable year and you stay the same. But most likely, it's going to go back a little bit. So you can go back from 1-1. And you can go back from number 1 offense and still be very, very good. I think that's what Miami fans are hoping for. Let's not compare him to Cam Ward every step of the way, because the chances are that's not going to go well. But like you said, Cam Ward was not rated this high coming into Miami. Cam Ward, this was projected behind Carson Beck in the same draft class.
It's not even close. The year.
Right.
It's not even close. Like Cam Ward entering Miami's program and Carson Beck entering Miami's program, there is a wide gulf there in terms of perception, accomplishments, and tape. And what the NFL thinks of him. It's not remotely close. So
I'm not sure. Well, Ward was Ward is Ward.
I was a big Cam Ward guy. I wanted Cam Ward more than any other quarterback in that portal when there was an open debate, when we were debating guys like Will Howard. Like, trust me, I was a big Cam Ward fan. Carson Beck comes into this program with a lot more going on for himself and a lot less. The only question that he really needs to answer is, can he mitigate the interceptions? Let's not pretend like Cam Ward didn't also make some bad decisions out there. Ultra talented guys that need to carry the weight on a team that is a little bit depleted and less talented than what the nation thinks tend to do that a little bit more, especially when you have faith in them. For me, faith in them and their ability. For me, the big question mark, the only real question mark that I have about this player is the arm.
The arm's a big one. And look, I'm already kind of seeing where this could go after a loss, because hopefully, look, we go undefeated. Every game is perfect.
Oh, you mean like the perception of his leadership skills? Again, not Cam. Cam is a unicorn.
And well, this perception, I've heard enough that I think it might be a real thing, that he's not quite the same leader as Cam Ward. His body language is not the same. Cam Ward was so awesome as far as he'd throw a pick, 6, the worst pass you've ever seen, and he'd come back like it was nothing. We'd be down by 20 and it was nothing. I don't think that's not going to be Carson Beck.
Also, the way the teammates and broadcasters spoke about Gunner when he took over for Carson Beck was a little telling. But again, he does not need to be that guy. Mario Cristobal recruited guys entering year 3, the 3 that I highlighted specifically, to be culture changers, to be the leader. He just can't be negative. He can't be Tyler Van Dyke.
Right.
And I don't think he's going to be that.
And that's another thing, the body language issues, the idea that, hey, he's hanging out with his girlfriend instead of his teammates. We've heard these stories before, but I will say the big difference is, Carson Beck's just a lot better than Van Dyke, right? Van Dyke had his period of hype, but I think when you really look at the accomplishments behind the hype, Beck's done just a lot more. He's a lot better at reading a defense than Van Dyke. I think if you're looking at IQ, Cam Ward, to me, again, I always say the biggest difference between Cam Ward and Van Dyke is between the years. I'd say Ward, seeing the field, IQ-wise, EQ-wise, all that, I put him number 1. Van Dyke, you put down here. Beck's somewhere in the middle of that, but I think he's closer to Ward than to Van Dyke. He can read a defense. He had a lot on him at University of Georgia as far as, he's not like a robotic quarterback in that system where they're just saying, hey, throw here, throw here. Here's a picture of, Ryan Reynolds, and throw it this way. It wasn't that kind of offense. He had a lot to do. And he's a veteran, man. This guy graduated before the pandemic. Right. So he's been in college for a long, long time. That experience makes a big difference. You saw with Ward.
The Ryan Reynolds reference makes more sense. This guy's Van Wilder, apparently.
That's right.
Yeah. Pete, I'm curious your thoughts here, because I think if I tapped any Miami Hurricanes fan in 2019 and I said, hey, you're going to get the SEC championship winning quarterback entering your program. And we saw reports today, Georgia wanted to keep Carson Beck. Alabama was first to call Carson Beck, which I found interesting considering he had to do not contact. But I think that this is, any way you slice this, injury notwithstanding, and that is a big part of that. I don't want to diminish that whatsoever. But we're feeling a lot better about the quarterback position now that we have him here. I think this is a home run, Pete.
24-3, man. That's the stat I said the other day on the show, which is his record as a starting quarterback, and that goes a long way for me. You pair that with the fact that he is a legit NFL prospect, because there's guys who have won a lot of games, but do you pair that with the physical tools, which we know he has? The arm is the arm. We'll see. No one can guarantee that he'll be 100%, but we feel good about it, right? So that goes without saying. To me, I look at this situation and I say, just kind of how you guys were saying, and D, you and I were talking about this off air the other day. I feel better about this pickup, this situation right now than I did when Miami picked up Cam Ward at the same time last year. To say that the results are going to be anywhere the same, to say the results are going to be anywhere the same, we can't predict that. But
I think you could say win-loss.
I feel very good about the position he puts Miami in. I don't think you're going to see a steep drop-off. You could have won a game or two more last year, but you still finished with 10 wins at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. I think 10 wins should be a point of...
That should be the standard.
Yeah,
that should be the standard.
You got to reestablish that standard, because that has not been the standard. Let's get that straight. Mm-hmm. People will be in the comments saying the standard should be an ACC championship and a national championship. We would love to get back to that point, but we've never won the ACC.
Your standard can't be something that you've literally never accomplished. Like we haven't won Charlotte. Those are your aspirations. The standard, it becomes a standard after it becomes routine. It is far from routine here for Miami. And you have a guy that, in what is perceived to be a much tougher conference, has won the conference, has gone toe-to-toe with other teams gunning, other top 10 ranked teams gunning for that very same conference, and he's held them at bay with his superior talents. I think this is fantastic for Miami. I have a lot of optimism now about the season. As opposed to a week ago, it's a bit night and day. That's how bad Emory Williams' half was, I think, in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And we were all kind of feeling it, too. Look, year 4, man, God, Mario should be really thanking this collective right now, because as a recruiting base head coach that in year 4, which is supposed to be the make or break year for a recruiting base head coach, we had Emory Williams out there. And that was kind of a big misstep here. But, you may say things about his process. You may get frustrated with Mario Cristobal's timeline, especially when it comes to this position. It happened just like last year. Quarterback declares for the draft. Very same week, right before Wild Card Weekend, commits to the University of Miami. Mario Cristobal comes out smelling like roses, as a former Rose Bowl winning champion, something Dan Lanning cannot say.
There you go.
Comes out smelling like roses because ultimately his process netted the top guy at the position, and that's great for the University of Miami. Now, Miami still has work to do. They have to fill out this roster. When in retrospect, it's kind of amazing they got Daniels at the wide receiver position just based off of what Emory was doing in practice. They need to address that. Maybe more guys enter the portal. There are pie-in-the-sky scenarios everywhere. You can fantasy book. We're behind because we didn't have that that position solidified. A guy like Noah Thomas, I'm sure Carson Beck leaves Athens and is like, damn, I could have really used that guy over there. The timing is the timing. We know from Miami's pursuit of Jeremiah Smith and not exactly getting the Cam Ward piece locked in. The most important thing is getting the quarterback. Now, there's another portal. There's other teams that have portal windows opening up for them. There's a spring portal. I assume that now that Miami has solidified this position, and I know from speaking to folks around the program, they need to address the wide receiver position, no doubt. We know what they're trying to do on defense. I think all in all, now that they've solidified the quarterback position, this is a great transfer portal for Miami.
Oh, no question about it. And while you get your phone, we got a question here from Stephen Aveo asking idea what number of transfers we might seek in spring. So in terms of just looking forward, you mentioned it, Mike, wide receiver, big time wide receiver. You talk about Zechariah Branch,
I'm also excited about what Lofton can do with this player, given what he did with Brock Bowers.
Unbelievable. I think Lofton and Trader both are going to have a great opportunity. But yeah, as far as adding, you saw Noah Thomas and Branch go to Georgia. Those are 2 big ticket items. Yeah. Eric Singleton going to Auburn. I think that's sort of the sandbox you're looking at in terms of the wide receiver Miami would like to add. They wanted to add those guys. Didn't have the quarterback in place. We'll see what the spring portal window looks like. Last year, you got Sam Brown. A little late, didn't work out as well as you'd hoped. Elijah Badger was another one you probably could have gotten, goes to Florida, has more success. So we'll see what this post-spring transfer portal window looks like. But that's I think, item number 1, somebody that can command a lot of targets at wide receiver. You're also going to potentially look at linebacker, sideline to sideline guy. We'll see. You got Heatherman coming in as defensive coordinator, which we're going to talk a lot about. And he's going to evaluate this roster, the young guys, who looks good, who doesn't. And I'm sure he'll have a shopping list of his own heading out of the spring. Plus, you don't know who's going to get injured. Running back, we'll see if hopefully that stays healthy. You're probably going to add someone after spring there just for depth, at least. Maybe a bigger name guy if one of your guys gets injured, God forbid. So spring will tell us a lot about what we need going forward.
Yeah, I'm really terrified whenever I look at our defensive coordinator too, and I think that's a good thing to have. If your defensive coordinator looks scary, I'm just naturally predisposed to assume that your defense is going to be solidified, because I'd be terrified to let that guy down.
He looks like someone you guys talk about in your Wrestler of the Week segments.
Look, you have a guy that's tall, built, has crazy eyes, is bald, and has that kind of beard. I'm terrified of you, just naturally. As a Latino from Miami, I'm scared of you.
Well, I gotta say, what I like about him was I didn't hear him thank any family. Did he thank a wife in the presser? If you guys saw the presser, I saw most of it. I didn't hear him thank any wife.
I couldn't look him in the eyes. This guy makes me uncomfortable, and I think this is all good.
Your soul burns if you do.
Yeah. I think that
pull up his headshot.
If no, please don't. This guy scares me a little bit, and I like that. And from just what I've heard about him, you can point to the numbers, and the stats are good. Who knows? Look, Miami has never made a hire, really, usually, that people wouldn't get excited about. Usually when they make a hire, it's someone that had a good season, that has credentials, and it's someone new. It's very easy to get excited. I'm a little jaded at this point, and I'm willing to say, let's wait to see. But here's something that I do like about this individual is that he has a teaching background. Lane Skidry, I happen to know that was a very complicated defense that he ran. For whatever reason, there was a communication breakdown, not just between he and the players, by the way, but he and the other coaches on the staff. He couldn't communicate properly. And if you have someone with an education background in a teaching position, such as defensive coordinator, I feel like that can only boost his ability to actually get results down here.
He prides himself as a teacher. By the way, look at his bio. It says his wife is Julie. So I apologize to Julie if you're watching this. But everything you hear about Heatherman is that this guy is living in the office, similar to Coach Cristobal. He is there.
They're Schiano guys.
The Schiano guys, exactly. So they're all ball all the time, which is something we need right here. I mean, look, and that's not the reason why this defense was struggling, but at least there's alignment between what the head coach expects and how the defensive coordinator gets down. And some of the guys that he worked for in the past, Ignetti, Schiano, some tough Italian dudes that win football games and coach hard, right? And expect a lot from their staff. So
right. You're getting choked up just knowing that we've addressed all the defensive issues.
We were despairing a week ago. I mean, really look at a week ago when we did this show.
Yeah.
It was a fun show.
I think I heard you say, I need to go back to being an attorney. Out loud. You said that out loud.
We had a lot of fun, but it was kind of like those comedians that, like they're having fun. And the next day you see them like, in the front page of the paper. So it really felt very hopeless, right? Because you don't have a quarterback. You got no hope. Mm-hmm. Now you got hope that you can hang your hat on. Again, to expect 1-1 draft pick, to expect number one offense is going to be too much to expect most likely, but you're hoping the defense steps up with this addition of Heatherman. You mentioned the portal. I kind of changed the subject a little bit about the next portal, but the portal period that just passed, Zachariah Poyser, that was the first guy we got. So it kind of didn't attract the headlines throughout the portal period, but this was a guy who's number 2 ranked safety in the portal, freshman All-America, along with OJ Frederick. So you got 2 freshmen, first-team freshman All-Americas at defensive back in your defensive backfield. That's a place you'd like to be. Charles Brantley, a proven, highly graded Michigan State cornerback. You got probably 2 of the best young cornerbacks in the portal in terms of Ethan O'Connor from Washington State. You get him over Georgia. And then Emmanuel Carnley from Arizona, long athletic corners from the old Pac-10. I guess what's Washington State, whatever conference they're in, and then Arizona in the Big 12 now. But those guys were highly, highly recruited. Ole Miss, Georgia, Michigan, those are the teams you're beating for those young corners. And then Xavier Lucas, we'll see if that situation gets resolved today or at least takes a step forward today. He'd be the top young corner in the portal immediately. So the secondary has been upgraded tremendously. David Belay, the defensive tackle from Louisiana Tech, saw a picture of him, didn't have a neck, looked exactly how you want it to look at that position. So a lot of good work in the portal on defense, some nice additions on offense. Let's see what we got in spring, see who looks good, and then we'll know what we need to do going forward.
Question for both you guys, because I've seen a change with Miami with regards to the linebacker position. It wasn't a priority as soon as the portal opened. The general attitude was, let's develop our guys. And since we brought in our new DC, more people are saying, let's get a sideline to sideline guy. We didn't have a sideline to sideline guy. We had a hash mark to hash mark guy last year. So why the change? The coaches, I guess, are starting to realize that with this DC, we need a different type of linebacker at Miami. Pete, I go to you first.
Well, you guys want, by the way, I just want to say you guys wanted a picture of the new DC.
I did not. No, I asked you specifically. Please don't.
Oh,
after you asked me for one.
I have one anyways.
Oh,
there you go.
That is haunting.
There's Miami,
mastermind.
Miami's new DC, Corey Heatherman.
Look at that smile.
That's
the prominent eyebrows.
That's really unfortunate. That's a really unfortunate image.
Send it to Cynthia.
Don't ever.
So
please get it off the screen.
But linebacker wise, watch your Pete. Go ahead. What do you think about the linebacker position going forward here?
I mean, first of all, there hasn't been anything announced, or we haven't heard anything for sure on Coach Nicholson, right?
Not yet.
Nope.
That'll be, that's an interesting one because a lot of people have thought highly of him. I think that room needs to perform better. He would probably tell you the same thing. And Heatherman does have his background in that position, but I'm a little bit concerned with that spot, to tell you the truth. I think they need another addition there. I think Bobby Washington, his injury literally the day he announced, or day after he announced he was coming back after he had entered the portal, that was not a good sign, because a guy like him in year 3, I would expect him to be ready, right, in terms of the learning curve. So that was a big loss to me. I think you need to go get a portal guy 100%.
Yeah, I think part of it is the portal didn't have any impact guys really at linebacker. There were guys that could play. Yeah. The thought is we're going to get a guy that's kind of okay when we could see our young guys in spring and really find out what we have.
Doesn't feel the specific need, but I did like Elijah Herring, who I think ended up going to Florida State.
That was Memphis. Your guy. You're a big Memphis aficionado. Yeah.
Not necessarily a fit for this, but there were attractive linebackers out there.
Yeah, I think that was, again, this is what my information is. They just didn't think that they were guys that were legitimately college football playoff impactful guys. And that's why they wanted to see what these guys have. I don't think they think that the problem is solved. I think it's more, let's see if Cam Pruitt can be a stud. Let's see what Adarius Hayes can do. Let's see them in this defense with this new defense, see what we, assess. And then post spring, hopefully there's an impact player that comes in that you can add, as opposed to adding like a Jalen Alderman type who doesn't really move the needle. I think that was their thought process. We'll see if they're right or wrong. I tend to agree with you. I think we need a linebacker that can really go. Usually, what those guys are pretty quick. So if we had that on the roster right now, we should know by now. Perryman, Spence, Colin McCarthy, even a little bit. Those guys usually, forget Vilma and Morgan and Ray Lewis. All those guys, you kind of figure it out pretty quick that they're impact guys. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, well, I think everybody can be aided by the defensive line living up to their reputation. Mesidor comes back, that's great. We need a coverage guy that can go out into the flats and really lock down Syracuse. My God, how we used him at the end. When he announced that he was coming back, he actually posted a photo of him patrolling the flats. I wanted to die. But the defensive line needs to get better. I like the acquisition, the kid from Louisiana Tech, but I happen to know Bain was dealing with an injury all year. We saw that hammy in week 1. Never fully got to be the Ruben Bain that we saw his freshman season. We need him to rebound. And I don't know if that means him focusing on either getting his body type a little bit different or focusing on one specific position rather than being this hybrid. I'd love for him to be the hybrid. I'd love for him to be the guy that he was his freshman year. He wasn't that his sophomore year, and Miami suffered because of it. Miami secondary suffered. Miami's linebackers suffered. So ultimately, it's all one fist, right? If you have a wayward finger, you're not gonna knock anybody out like that. So hopefully we can get everything nice and organized there. And we can get more of the defensive line, which would make everything better. In that Syracuse game, defensive line first quarter was getting home. McCord struggled that first quarter. Miami built up a 21-0 lead. After that first quarter, for whatever reason, Barron, you can criticize the lack of snaps that he got, which I think in retrospect, I understand what the coaching said. I know exactly what was going on there. I know why the snaps were limited, but also your season's on the line. He's one of the more effective pass rushers. I would have liked to see more of him. Let's move to the topic du jour today, which is Quinn Ewers.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about
this
it.
was a player that was linked to Miami. There were reports of $6 million offers out there. Quinn Ewers has declared for the NFL draft. One thing is for certain, Quinn Ewers is never taking another snap at the University of Texas. We can poke holes as to whether or not he's going to enter the draft. I have to follow up with some people, some NFL personnel people I know before the college football playoff, a college football playoff in which I think Quinn Ewers acquitted himself nicely, especially in that Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. He made some big-time throws in overtime against Arizona State. He had like a 5th round, 6th round draft grade attached to him before the CFP. This isn't a great quarterback class. Maybe did something to boost that, but ultimately it would not shock me in the least if Quinn Ewers is playing college football next year. It's just a matter of who.
Yeah, and the number they say $6 million for Ewers. If that's the case, then we got the steal of all time with Beck, because Beck has always been a better NFL prospect than Ewers. I think Ewers, I thought his arm was always better, than it's been the last couple of years. I don't know if it's the fact that he's been beat up so much physically that he just can't get quite the full extension that he wants to get. He's short arming balls, but good short ball passer, even against even in the college football playoff against Ohio State.
He declared, guys.
Yeah, that's what
that's what we're talking about. Where you been?
No, well, you just said that you thought he'd come back. No,
that's a matter of opinion.
Didn't Beck do the same thing in Ward, or is this a true?
Yeah, it's a matter of opinion.
But the thing is, the actual deadline for the draft is.
Oh, there's the J. Crew schooling us. All right,
that's
cool.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I think there's plenty. There's plenty. Look,
there could be.
There are plenty of big schools that are interested in the services of Quinn Ewers, and I don't know. That may be true. I don't know how the CFP affects that. We have different timelines for different CFP, but I still wouldn't be surprised if his agent isn't on the phone right now with other college football programs, the likes of Oregon, the likes of even his former school, Ohio State. Georgia is in on a quarterback. We know that they wanted to keep Beck now, according to reports. Maybe he's hearing from NFL people that his draft stock improved with that.
We got a board certified agent.
The agent better work quick because it's today. It's tonight by midnight. So today's the deadline. So I'm with you, but I think this is a little bit different. I'm with you that I'm sure he's getting calls right now. No. I'm with you that I'm sure he is getting calls.
Do you think it's a mistake for him to go to the NFL?
I haven't spoken to a scout specifically on him, so I wouldn't know one way or the other, just being honest with you. But if he's like a 2nd, 3rd round pick right now, I would say go. Honestly, get yourself in the league at this point.
But if he's not a 2nd, 3rd round pick,
if he's a mid to late round pick, if he's not a top 100 pick, then yeah, it's a mistake.
And he's certainly going to make more money in college than he would in the pros.
Yes. But sometimes guys are just like, yes, it could be a bigger amount, but they would still rather take the chance on getting themselves to that next level already and being a pro. Some guys, there's money on the table, but they're just done with college. This would be a 6th year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
a lot of injuries. This last year didn't go the way that he thought it would, not just from accomplishments on the field, not just from a health standpoint, but also Arch Manning breathing down your neck was not very fun for him over there. You look at the quarterback class for the NFL. We know the 2 top guys. Who's next on that list behind Shador and Cam, Pete, in terms of pro prospects? Is it Quinn?
I like Jackson Dart a lot.
Yeah,
I like Jackson Dart a lot.
You like Jackson Dart a lot?
A lot. I do, and I think he's rising. I think he's rising based on what I've heard.
Even after watching that Florida game.
Yeah,
I mean, Quinn Ewers had his share.
Every one of these guys has ugly games on tape, without a doubt. So that's just the evaluation process. But I think there's a lot to like about him. Who's the other guy, D?
Some people like Milroe. I mean, that's a real thing.
I'm not completely out on Milroe. There's another guy that we both liked a lot, D, that we were talking about the other day. that we both said was a little bit underrated.
Will Howard's moving up a little bit. I don't know if he's going to move up all in that range.
Let me look at the list.
But to me, Ewers, he kind of reminds me of like a Blaine Gabbert. I don't see like spectacular with him. To me, Beck is significantly better.
Oh, McCord. That's who I was thinking.
McCord,
I like McCord.
Yeah. He has.
I think he would be a good QB at the next
He has
level.
some stuff to him, but yeah, Ewers to me is like a Gabbert. Big guy. Looks like a Lannister. Like one of the crappy Lannisters, not like the good Lannisters.
What would you have said if he committed to Miami?
Who, Milroe?
No,
Ewers number one overall talent. Winner, resilient. Probably use resilient.
I'm just curious what your takes would be.
I put Ewers and Beck in the same boat, though. If I'm being honest, like a similar boat.
They're not perfect. They're not perfect prospects.
I would say Beck. If you're comparing the two, they're not perfect. I'd say Beck has more big time throws than Ewers. If you took Beck's big time throws and you put Ewers big time throws, Ewers is a dink and dunker, really. Like if you really look at Ewers and watch him this year, he's big, he's decent athlete. I'd say Beck's probably a better athlete than Ewers. But fine. He's not total stiff.
There were multiple drives in that Cotton Bowl against Ohio State where Ewers didn't look once in the direction of his wide receivers.
Yeah, I don't think he has that kind of arm. He threw to the running back quite a bit. And, Arizona State, he lofted a couple in there. He had nice throws. But in terms of like driving the ball, I mean, you watch Carson Beck's 2023 film, he's driving the ball through windows. He's that third base background. He can really chuck it. I think that's why Beck's always been the higher rated prospect from an NFL standpoint. By the way, interesting conversation I listened to a podcast with Rick Spielman. Rick Spielman, former GM of the Minnesota Vikings, drafted Justin Jefferson. And he was talking about this year's quarterback class as Cam Ward number one by far, even though he has questions about him. He says he's the best quarterback. He was saying for next year, because they were talking about Ewers potentially going back. They were talking about, Garrett Nussmeier. They were talking about Drew Aller, all the guys. And Spielman said that in his view, Carson Beck at Miami, this is after the transfer, would be the best quarterback for next year in his eyes, number one overall quarterback over Nussmeier, over Aller, over Ewers if he went back, over whoever came back. Arch Manning's not going to go pro in 1 year. So out of that whole crop of guys, Spielman said that Beck was his number one for next year. He had Beck number one this year before, the bad season and the injuries. But
there's no reason why he wouldn't get back. There's a fair amount of consensus when it comes to the NFL scouts about Carson Beck. If he's able to quell the concerns that go along with that arm injury, he should be, as the books anticipate, in line for that number one overall pick position next year. And imagine that. Can you imagine where we've been, the doldrums of quarterbacking? We had one De'Aaron King season that we didn't realize we were that horny for until we actually saw it. And now all of a sudden you go from a program that can't put anybody into the NFL to back-to-back years with the number one overall pick at that position. And then you can start saying things like Miami is back.
Yeah, glad you brought that up because I had this conversation with my son yesterday after baseball practice talking about QBU. He's 10 years old, so he has no concept of what QBU is. Honestly, no one does if they're not 40 or over, really. But kids at home, at one point, Miami had Jim Kelly, first-round pick, Pro Football Hall of Famer. He was replaced by Bernie Kosar, national champion, first-round pick in the supplemental draft, Pro Bowler, one for your former and maybe future Cleveland Browns. Before Bill Belichick came and ruined everything. Then he was replaced by Vinny Testaverde, number one overall pick in the draft.
Didn't win a championship, though.
Did not win a championship.
Who won
the
a championship after?
Serial pedophile. Oh, that year.
No.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Sandusky.
No,
yes.
No.
Replaced by Steve Walsh, won a championship and also a first-round pick. People don't realize this as a supplemental draft pick. He was a first-round pick.
I just wanted to seize on that, too, as everyone worries about, this guy's not going to be as good as Cam Ward. Vinny Testaverde, much better quarterback than Steve Walsh. Steve Walsh ended up winning the championship.
I don't agree with that.
You
See, I think let's take a step back.
Are you just going
You
results?
said something that I let slide,
What?
but I know we're going to get killed in the comments,
What?
and I would agree with the comments. You lumped Dorsey in with a bunch of crappy quarterbacks or guys that were not as good.
I was talking about draft position.
I mean, I heard Jaron Williams and Dorsey in the same conversation.
I was talking about draft position.
The draft that goes to traits, but Ken Dorsey as a college quarterback was elite.
Legend.
Elite. And not just because he played on a good team. He was the point guard of the team. He's an offensive coordinator between the ears.
He was a very smart player, and he had a lot of talent. And if you watch Ken Dorsey's games, you look back in horror not realizing how bad some of those throws were.
The throw, the way it looked, he played in the NFL for multiple years just based on how smart he was.
He was one of, if you look at that Cleveland Browns graphic, he was one of the starters.
But I remember living through it. And those of you who are old enough to live through it, you remember how this went. I saw it in person on Green Street with Ken Dorsey. And there's some of you guys will know this if you were out there. We had Kenny Kelly, who had a great arm, baseball prospect, was a big prospect. I believe he was a parade All-America. Okay.
Just know that this take is for others. You don't have to convince me.
No,
you don't have to espouse
when
the
I hear
virtues of
Ken Dorsey and Jaron Williams in the same sentence, it needs to be described.
Okay.
So you had Kenny Kelly, highly rated quarterback, baseball player, parade All-America. You had Reggie Wayne, Santana Moss in place. You had good talent on your offense, but it didn't click. Ken Dorsey, they used to shave the freshman's head back then.
Yeah.
So like
his headshot that season was a tire fire.
He looked like the guys from Dune. What's it called? Those guys. The Elvis was one of them. The Elvis actor.
Austin Butler. I don't know. I fell asleep during Dune.
He looked
not for me.
Like a skinny version of that.
Great cinematography, but just not for me plotting.
Yeah. And then I watched it yesterday too. I agree with you. But anyways, so he was shaved and looked like nothing like a college quarterback. But the second he stepped on Green Tree, that offense clicked and they started moving up and down the field. If you recall that 99 season, offense was very much inconsistent. Kenny Kelly gets hurt. Ken Dorsey comes in 3 games, sets the record as a true freshman, sets the record for points scored in a 3-game span. His first 3 starts as a true freshman, ends up having a great Gator Bowl. The rest is history. So Ken Dorsey was a difference maker.
I'm happy
all
for the
way
history
to say
lesson.
Steve Walsh, in my opinion, let me know in the comments if you saw them both. I know I've seen them only in old games. I know a lot of you guys lived through it. I know my dad would back this take up and a lot of OGs. Steve Walsh was a better college quarterback than Vinny Testaverde. You talk about the Heisman. I know most Canes fans would rather ride into battle with Steve Walsh than Vinny Testaverde. Pro-wise, of course, with the body, the arm, Vinny Testaverde had a better pro career. They were both first-round picks, though. So you had Kelly, Kozar, Testaverde, Walsh, 4 first-round picks in a row. Craig Erickson, 4th-round
Give
pick.
me Erickson over them all just for his contributions to the chicken wing industry.
Oh, the chicken wing contributions are legendary. I get the point that you're trying to make, especially like Miami fans cannot, when it comes to like greatness, disassociate team greatness and overall achievements from that conversation. It's why Dan Lebitard trotted out the take, which I agree with. Cam Ward's is the greatest quarterback Miami has ever had.
As a talent or as
a talent?
I mean, Jim Kelly's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that building.
Yeah, I didn't look. I'm 39 years old. I don't have memories at all of Jim Kelly in a Miami uniform.
Right,
I do have memories of Jim Kelly as a Dolphin killer and a Buffalo Bill, and he was outstanding. Glad to have him a part of the QB lore, but just no memories. For me, in my lifetime that I got to see with my eyes, I think it's pretty easy. The Cam Ward has been the best quarterback there. But I understand how inflammatory of a statement that is because I've always been a Ken Dorsey guy. Contrary to you decontextualizing what it is that I said, I can't for 1 second separate how great Ken Dorsey was for those Miami Hurricanes teams. And he made plays. Look, the guy had a couple clunker throws. Okay. He also made big time plays in big moments and was a great leader for a great team that should have won 2 national titles at least. Ken Dorsey was an all-time legend for the University of Miami. Cam Ward is a great deal more talented than him. And if someone wants to argue better, sure, go right ahead. If we're making this an argument based on talent, it ain't close. It ain't particularly close at all between Ken Dorsey and Cam Ward when it comes to talent.
No, now we're talking Ken Dorsey, Cam Ward. Yeah, Cam Ward's better at UM, better overall. That one I agree with. So we got a comment here from EJ shouting out Brad Kaya. Yeah, Brad Kaya's our all-time leading passer, man. He was a good player. If we could tackle Dalvin Cook once in that FSU series, Brad Kaya would be remembered a lot more fondly. And if he came back for his senior year, he left early. Really shouldn't have. It was I didn't.
If NIL was around, he would have been back.
Could have, and it just wasn't a fit with.
Or he might have transferred to another.
Yeah,
right.
that's true.
It wasn't a fit with Richt.
Good shout, Pete.
He knew more. I mean, he knew more than John Richt, probably. So I think that was part of the tension. His quarterback coach wasn't. I don't know if he had the respect of he respected the quarterback coach there. Comment from Mohammed Hussein. Appreciate your support as always. Smash that like button. Says Beck gives us a chance to stay on pace for consecutive 10-win seasons, maybe more. That to me is really. And Pete, you talked about this. Is let's just stay relevant. Let's just stay in the conversation. I want to win the ACC, obviously, get to the playoff. That's the goal. But in terms of, we just got to stay relevant. We got to be a team that the logo's in the picture. And if you get, by the way, let's say you win 10 games more. tougher schedule. Let's say you get to the ACC championship. Let's say, you make the playoffs, losing the first game, whatever. Let's just say you have a year comparable to this year in some way, maybe better in some ways, worse than others. Now you're really staying in the game. And if you get 2 back-to-back first-round quarterbacks, Francis Mauigoa going in the first round potentially next year, now you're an NFL type of team. And I think perception-wise,
Ruben Bain too, probably in that conversation.
If he can crank it up. So, and who knows who else we add. So what I would say is let's stay relevant, where little kids, when they play their video game, or teenagers when they're playing the NCAA game, they're picking UM because their quarterback's in 92 again, right? Things like that. They watch them. They see the draft. There's quarterbacks getting picked in the draft with the orange and green. These are all important things. So ultimately, very happy that Beck chose Miami. You saw him on the cigarette boat, right? With his girlfriend and her sister. Got a lot of attention in the group chats. He's feeling the Miami vibes. And, probably I talked to some sources actually close to the recruitment beat. And a lot of people mentioned that one of the deciding factors was the ready availability of Islas Canarias Croquetas at the dining pavilion at Dayland
I like
Mall.
the sweater.
You like this? This is croquetacounty.com.
It's like a Rocky Balboa training sweater that you got there with Croqueta County on it.
I know I'm getting a little heavy, so it's kind of puffing a little bit. Croquetacounty.com. You can get all the merch that I wear on the show. And then, again, Islas Canarias in the dining pavilion, 40 years and counting. It's a staple. But look, it's kind of like the Alabama offense under Nick Saban. The fundamentals never changed. You had the classic croqueta. You had the bistec empanizado. You had all the classics, right? But you can still adjust to the times with the kimchi croquetas, with the vegetarian items, with all the different flavors. So you keep the classic base. There's one championship for 40 years. Best croqueta year in, year out, voted new times, you name it, every award you can name of. Anthony Bourdain driving all the way to Sweetwater to eat at this establishment. That tells you what these guys are dealing with. Look at all the awards. But they can adjust. They can stay with the times. So all kinds of cool stuff. At Islas Canarias, dining pavilion, food court in Dayland Mall, right there by campus. Hard to miss. Islas Canarias. They got all the classics at the food court. They're not skimping out there. It is high quality. Kind of stands out it's kind of like Carson Beck on Georgia's offense last year. It stands out among very mediocre options in the area.
Well,
right.
I mean,
it's a first round pick and a lot of undrafted.
I will say Ladd McConkey looks pretty good.
I'm on last year.
Yeah, but last season. But I've heard that, Georgia could have done more at the skill position. And it is kind of weird because their success doesn't really align with, I know you had a guy destined for Canton and Brock Bowers. So let's take him out of the picture. I mean, just on the lining up on the outside, not quite the talent that we'd associate with a perennial SEC national championship contending team. One last point that I have on Carson Beck, because I talked to some sources about a conversation that happened with our staff and Todd Monken, who's very familiar with Carson Beck, and the secondhand information that I got from that conversation, which was lengthy, that got everybody at Miami to buy in. And Todd Monken, no real skin in this game. Now you see the bang-up job that he's doing with Lamar Jackson with this offense that has made everybody realize the questions that we have about Lamar's passing ability, maybe we're blown well out of proportion because Monken's unlocked a lot of that stuff. Monken had glowing praise for Carson Beck and got this staff really excited to make this move. We know how some of the coaches felt about Emory Williams, some of them probably to a fault. After that conversation, everybody came around and knew what kind of talent they were dealing with. And Todd Monken, this guy's a genius in the NFL. Again, this guy's preparing for a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he took several hours out of his day to talk to Miami's coaching staff about Carson Beck's talent and Carson Beck, the individual. So I'm really excited about that. I have a lot of respect for Todd Monken and what he's able to do. Again, nothing in it for him to just wash praise upon the guy. He's not.
You really disrespected Mike Tomlin's defense that week, huh?
Let's move on here because I have a hard out, and I actually want to talk a great deal of wrestling with you this week.
A lot to talk about here.
So, Pete, I'm sorry about that, but a lot of wrestling coming this week.
Let's do it.
I have a lot of thoughts about this Netflix experiment so far. I like that the show wasn't 3 full hours. I like that it was 2.5. It caught me by surprise. But one of the things is, as a longtime wrestling fan of the indies, fan of other promotions, I think all wrestling can be good wrestling. Even the wrestling that you complain about on the internet can be good. We had one of those moments where it's actually kind of cool to see the bad faith aggregators that are very pro WWE all of a sudden be excited about a former AEW talent. But let's talk about a former AEW talent that made his debut on Monday night, Penta, luchador from Mexico. I was a big fan of his work, not just in TNA, but then later on in AEW. I think he had some of the greatest tag team matches. You and I were talking about the tag match that he had in the steel cage, the Lucha Brothers against the Young Bucks, which is one of the greatest tag matches I've ever seen. Penta strolls into, I guess sachets into the WWE. Very cool entrance, very cool presentation, great mask, great look. Should sell a ton of merch for WWE. I gotta say though, I was disappointed in this debut overall. And there are reports that he went way over time, which makes sense because one thing I know about Penta is Penta likes himself some Penta. And if you give Penta a microphone, he's going to go a little long there. Looked a little rusty, looked a little out of shape. That stuff will get buttoned up. He's never been a physique guy, but I think even in a match against Chad Gable, who's a spectacular talent,
the best.
And I'm randomly in a fantasy football league with him. Spectacular talent, great hand.
What's his team name, by the way?
It's a Happy Gilmore themed fantasy football league, so everybody has to have like a Happy Gilmore adjacent name.
What is you have a fantasy football league that's themed?
Yeah,
you are.
Yeah,
continue.
I'm one-eyed alligator in that league. Chubbs' hand. He might be Chubbs' hand. That's neither here nor there. That was honestly like a bit of a humble brag. But Penta has a botch in this match that looked pretty bad. The pacing was weird. They were milking the injuries in ways that.
Oh, you mean selling?
Well, WWE doesn't quite sell like that. Roman Reigns may. Roman Reigns has a leeway to sell like that within a match. A guy making his debut, I can understand how that gets some real life heat backstage. But the match, it finished strong. They approved the destroyer for him on Chad Gable. Gable takes it like a pro. Penta has, look, one thing, the crowd was super into this. The crowd loved the presentation. The crowd for the pro WWE crowd, for as much as they like to crap all over AEW, sure loves it when a guy can come in, stroll into their promotion and look like a star. And Penta did just that. This guy is a very capable singles wrestler. He has charisma in the ring. He does cool things that are marketable. I think this is a home run signing for WWE with a catch. Get his brother. Oh, yeah. And his brother, Ray Fenix, who I think is the more talented of the two, the younger of the two, quite simply put, is the greatest wrestler I've ever seen work with ropes in my life. No one has worked the ropes better than Ray Fenix. And if we have an opportunity to see both those guys in the WWE at the same time, it's a huge home run for WWE because these guys are supremely talented. I'm curious because I know you're the more pro WWE out of us two, and more, or I should say, we're both kind of pro WWE. I just espouse the virtues of AEW in competition more than you do. You like Penta from the time that you sampled AEW. How'd you feel about this debut?
Well, I like the competition too. Competition has been terrific for WWE, not so much for AEW, but certainly has helped WWE. And this helps WWE too to get one of the talents that I always like to watch in AEW. Like you mentioned, the tag is probably better for him with the Lucha Brothers reuniting. That's to me is the future here. I don't know if the singles push is going to get you where you need to get long term. You got to get his brother there, but he was well received. The crowd was into it, and they got into it even more as the match went on. It finished hot, so it was a little clunky early on, but I think the crowd was there, and that's really the most important thing to me when it comes to working. Pete, I sent you something in the private chat for you to pull up about Penta. People are going crazy about this Happy Gilmore theme league, by the way. I got a Happy Gilmore theme song as well on my song of the week.
Oh yeah, I'm excited.
But yeah, I thought he looked good. The presentation was good. WWE struggled with Mexican wrestlers, not because they're not pushing them. It's just
they also have a proclivity to just book them against one another.
Yeah, well, but they're not getting over except for Dominic Mysterio, who's as good as it gets. But here we go. I got this picture.
George
Kittle, tight end for the San Francisco 49ers. Huge fan of Penta, as you can see from the mask. The Cero Miedo slogan, no fear. That's his thing. So a shout out to Penta crossing over now officially with the big leagues in the WWE.
Who's your wrestler of the week?
Oh, my wrestler of the week. I got to go keeping it Hispanic themed here with Stephanie Vaqued. I hope I pronounced that right.
You're not gonna help the allegations, D.
Which ones?
That you push the Latino, propaganda.
Someone's got to. Chilean. So every continent has been represented in WWE, right? You have North America and Central America, Canada, USA, Mexico, Hall of Famers all over the place. Europe really, to me, is peaking right now, right? You talk about Gunther, you talk about Becky Lynch, Drew McIntyre.
How do you feel about Gunther so far? This reign is
cooling a little bit.
Yeah, it's
Cooling
kind
a
of
little
tailing
bit.
off a little bit. It's a shame. I thought that this guy could be a guy that could hold the belt for a long time. He's struggling maintaining the heat. The matches are still delivering. His body, I mean, he got his body to an impossible place for a man of that size to keep. So the body's falling off a little bit. I'm a little concerned about this Gunther reign.
He'll reinvent himself. First of all, he's always going to be good in the ring. I think he needs a little better, the right opponent. Maybe crank up the anti-American. Crank up the anti-American.
That's one of the Vinnie Mac moves.
Yeah.
We know that would be totally cranked up.
I don't think he's going to go with the whole Nazi thing, which is always that's the classic German move.
Yeah, that was like catnip for Vinnie Mac.
Yeah, 100%.
He would be all.
That's where
into
Vinnie would be cranking that up right now. So we'll see what Gunther does. I think it'll be fine. But Europe is having a moment. Great European wrestlers. Will Ospreay, your boy.
Yeah.
So
I think he's great, Will Ospreay. I know that people have their opinions because he represents like internet wrestling, but you watch the guy in the ring.
He's good, and he could be,
phenomenal.
and he could be better. He still has upside. Australia with Rhea Ripley and others, Buddy Murphy, you were talking about earlier. So
Yeah.
Australia is doing good. Every continent's got wrestlers except for South America. They're really, I know we got some OGs in the chat as far as wrestling. I can't think of a South American star really. So coming from Chile, Stephanie Vaquer, she has a great look, but she's not too much of a gimmick. She just kind of looks like a fit girl, and her style, very realistic, presentations, very realistic. She's in NXT kicking butt. I think NXT right now, and this happens at NXT, the women tend to accelerate faster than the men at NXT. You did have Braun Breaker come out of there, of course, Gunther, but they haven't had the same pipeline of men come from NXT as women. But I think the next generation of women in that promotion is outstanding. Her better than any. Really enjoy watching her work. She had a move that involved some groin thrusting and also smashing heads in the mat that had Booker T going crazy on commentary. You can see that on Twitter.
A lot of torque in those hips.
Yeah,
no
she
doubt.
definitely got great hip rotation. And
Maybe she wants to play
strong
linebacker.
thighs. So she that's right.
This is a sideline linebacker if we're drawing a football comp to get Pete back in, because I know
he's
he's
in the portal.
She was.
She was actually. She got away from AEW quite. That's one that they'll live to regret. I think WWE does a much better job with their women's division than AEW does in terms of storyline and also being able to have something for somebody after a program ends. We've seen this time and time again with AEW where, okay, we have big plans for Deonna Purrazzo when she debuts, and then what happens?
Yeah.
Nothing. Like Britt Baker goes missing. AEW tends to do that a lot. People just go missing and you wonder, are they injured? There's no information. Do we just not have anything? Where's Wardlow? Like we just have no explanation for when people go away. And NXT, she's actually an exception to the rule. Their scouting network is very good. They get physically gifted athletes from the collegiate ranks, and they say, we can do something with this. She comes in as a hot free agent, just like Julia also did.
Yep.
And they have a perfect balance there. I'm a big fan of what Shawn Michaels is doing with developmental over there. And now that they have these secondary titles on the main roster, I think that's going to go a long way. For having creative solutions for some of these underutilized talents. We see Chelsea Green really shining with the opportunity. So great pick over there, high ceiling. Let's move on to music. I'm really excited about this music discussion. You go ahead and go first because you teased it, the Adam Sandler, Happy Gilmore tie-in here.
Yeah, so I like to keep it kind of geographic to what's happening with the football team for those who are still listening that are football first here. But Carson Beck, right? He's from Duval County. Cat Williams said it best. It's the only county that's more famous than the city in it. So from Duval, Carson Beck. And I want to keep that theme. And we talk about Florida musicians, right? Usually when people say the best rock band or rock artist from Florida, the name you hear is Tom Petty. I strongly disagree with that notion because the best music act, rock act, you name it, to come out of the state of Florida is
Pitbull.
Duval's.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Pitbull. Happy birthday, Ronnie Van Zant, Duval County resident and former lead singer, now deceased, of Lynyrd Skynyrd. A lot of
I
people
was
think
wondering how you pronounce that.
it's pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd. The
How would
debut
you
album
pronounce
is what this song is from is called Pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd. It's the name of the album, the debut album. It had Simple Man, had Freebird, had this song, Tuesday's Gone. What a debut. These guys went to Robert E. Lee High School, which is now Riverside High School in Jacksonville. And a lot of people think they're from Alabama because of Sweet Home Alabama, but they are not. They are Florida born and bred. This song right here, it was used in Happy Gilmore. And, it's about kind of just letting go. It's gone, right? This relationship, this situation is gone. We loved Cam Ward. It was a great run. He is off to be the number 1 overall pick of the draft. He's gone. We're moving on to Duval's own Carson Beck. Is the 2025 season officially. We got the quarterback. We got the defensive coordinator. Pop-Tarts Bowl's done. Portal's closed for now. This is our team. Let's rock and roll.
I've heard Eric Clapton describe McGee, another artist that we've highlighted in the Song of the Week, as like he can make his guitar cry and make it sound different ways. In this song, the guitar weeps, not gently. That's somebody else's. That's somebody else's gimmick. That's gimmick infringement. But in terms of setting a mood and making you feel an emotion from the jump, this song does it with one chord. It's a very special song.
And a piano solo as well. These guys are great guitars. I mean, the whole Freebird second half of the song is guitar solos. Great piano solo in this.
We had a celebratory happy hour last week where we celebrated Carson Beck, and you had a bit of trivia that I did not know about Bruno Mars on the piano.
Oh, I know that. Good transition. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the piano, and I was like, I can't.
Wow, another Canes Inside event that I wasn't invited.
Well, you left the chat.
But you were invited to it.
You were, yeah,
you
were. I happen to know you were. I got a text saying an invite was issued to you.
Well, you were
Shut
up,
bro.
Video.
No, man.
You like to be
funny
such
business
a
going on around here, man.
For a guy that hops, we're all
funny
wondering
business.
who did this. You keep hopping out of chats. There's invites left and right. We even extend invites after you hop out. You don't get to throw that in our face.
Funny business, man.
Are you in any chats? Are you still in any chats?
Yes, he's still in the Saudi chat.
Yeah. Are you still in the Saudi Arabia chat? I did some research on Saudi Arabia because I was planning a trip for Royal Rumble while we're talking wrestling. So Royal Rumble 2026 is going to be in Saudi Arabia. So I was looking up Riyadh, which I know you're a big fan.
You'd rather go
Riyadh's
there
blue.
You'd rather go there than Indianapolis, huh?
Oh, Indianapolis is freezing. I mean, the desert is warm, but Riyadh didn't seem like the move. That when you look at the tourist attractions, number 1 was a Chop Square. It was a square where they cut people's heads off. They said it's very culturally enriching. The blood is there. They said to be respectful of some of the things you see, and that the beheadings have slowed down. So don't go there expecting a beheading. It's kind of like when you go to like a natural preserve and they're like, don't expect to see the cougars. They're rare. They said the beheadings have slowed down. So beheading sightings are rare these days. So if you're going to Saudi expecting to see a beheading, they're very rare these days, but you can still go to Chop Square. Anyways, so I heard Jeddah is more the move. There's great grouper fishing in Jeddah. It's on the coast. So maybe the next Crown Jewel, whichever one's in Jeddah, we can make a trip.
I don't know if that was intentional, but that was one of the funniest performances I've ever seen in my entire life. Just matter of fact, that was really
there's no performance. I mean, I had this
really well done.
I had this conversation with my wife, and she got mad at me because she's like, "You're." I'm trying to plan trips
around
around the world.
That was like really good writing.
This was a verbatim conversation I had with my wife, and she was very upset because she's like, trying to plan a trip, and you're out here trying to go to Saudi Arabia. I told my kids about the trip because they want to go to Royal Rumble with me. We always go to Royal Rumble. And my kid's like, well, Nana says that you're not allowed to drive. The women aren't allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia, which again is false. You can't drive in Saudi Arabia now. The woman can. But there's a lot of misconceptions about Saudi Arabia, but I don't think that conversation should be had right now. All I'll say is Al Hilal is the best club in Asia. Anyways, you got to talk about some indie rock. Let's go.
All right, indie rock. This is my core discipline. My core. That's a tough act to follow, man. Oh, by the way, I have a wrestling storyline I want to run by you. Are you familiar with what's going on with Corey Graves right now? Real life heat.
Oh yeah.
Complaining openly on the internet. Kind of feels like a work. This kind of feels like a work. He's not on the main roster anymore. In a tweet said, I guess I'm not that famous, which he's, kind of not. He's kind of not. I know a way to get him famous.
Give it to us.
And we saw about a year and a half ago, there was low key was reported. He's medically cleared to return to the ring. I found a way to make him more famous, siphon off of someone else's celebrity. Lee Finning's doing his Jey Uso thing. You got McAfee and you have Michael Cole doing their thing on the announce table. That's super over. Corey Graves attack Pat McAfee.
Ooh.
Have him attack Pat, because they've always been contentious. This feels like long-term storytelling because they've always kind of had like an on-air thing, an on-air rivalry, an on-air resentment because Corey Graves is the better one at this, right? At least he feels that way. but Pat has all the fanfare and the charisma and all the adoration and all the jobs. Have him clobber him in the middle of that. Everyone like, whoa, you killed the vibe. The fans will immediately turn on him, and you've got instant heat. You can microwave a storyline. You can draw it out to WrestleMania, or you can do this in Pat McAfee's hometown of Indianapolis.
Love it. Love it.
That's a little something there. But yes, indie rock. Best rock band of the last few years to come out from a great music scene in Baltimore. We were talking a little bit about this. Had no idea that you spent some time in Baltimore. Great rock bands, great indie bands like Wyoke, Future Islands, Beach House. To me, the best one of the group, this band called Turnstile. Now, if you're not familiar, I understand because their seminal album, Glow On, came out kind of at the height of the pandemic. They toured this album for a while. And for those that don't know and aren't familiar with Turnstile or this album, for my money, Turnstile right now is the best, most energetic live act in all of music outside of maybe Travis Scott in terms of like energy that they bring to a show, but also they sound great. These are great performers. I've had the benefit of watching them before live, and they blew me away. This album, from the very first second I heard Glow On, start to finish, I was hooked. It's an engineering marvel. If you care about production, if you're an audiophile, please listen to this album with headphones. Your head will be spinning at all the nuance that's going on there. The song that I picked was did I pick Blackout? Yeah, Blackout's a great example of what I'm talking about here. Juxtapositions within songs, themes that are underlying, that build up.
Cool
breakdowns. Yeah, great. A cowbell pops up out of nowhere. Your head is spinning. There's samba influence. Like, what is going on here? This album came out in 2021. Typically rock acts, especially rock acts that percolate and finally break through the way that Turnstile did, they can't get the follow-up album out there quick enough so they can go out and tour that. Not Turnstile. This is an album that had a real amount of critical fanfare. It blew up over time, word of mouth. Their energy was unparalleled. The videos on social media that would appear from their shows were crazy. This is a band that knows it this moment in time. If they knock this next album out of the park, they have set up generational wealth for their families. They are headliners forevermore, which is why I happen to know the producers that they brought on this project. I have really high hopes, and it seems as though nobody's expectations for the next album are higher than the band itself. That's how meticulous they are. So please, as we ramp up to this summer, because this band is going to be touring this album, you're going to want to see that. Get yourself familiar with this band and with one of the greatest albums of all time. I vacillate. My favorite album of all time, Elephant by the White Stripes, and Glow On. I have three tattoos of albums on my body. Glow On is one of them. I love this album. I love this band. Get on now, because this might be the biggest band in rock and roll come the summer.
Listen, I just posted a link in the chat to the Canes Insight podcast playlist. You can get it on Spotify. You can get it on Apple Music. The link in the chat's Apple Music. But just look up Canes Insight on Spotify and Apple Music. You'll get our playlist.
Pete, did I do a good sell job? Are you going to check out this band? Not at all.
If you
I'm surprised by
link,
like you sent me good music, dude.
Put it in FIFA.
Dude,
Put it in FIFA.
I know.
I don't like it.
You sent me good music.
I still need you to send me the conversion, the Spotify to Apple Music conversion link.
Yeah,
for the FIFA playlist though, because it's
There you
not
go.
on.
Check out the playlist, Canes Insight, all playlist platforms. Insight 20% off Miami Hurricane Team Store, MiamiHTS.com. Mike's got a call with people way more famous than us that he's got to get to. Carson Beck is a Cane. Heatherman's a Cane. We're back, baby. We got hope again for the season. Lies are set up. We got whole summer to tell lies. Would have been a lot harder before this week. So appreciate everybody joining us.
Thank you, Carson Beck,
Wouldn't
for
have
setting up
stopped you.
generational wealth for the monies.
Go Canes.
Go Canes.